there, welcome into the College Basketball Bracket Science Podcast, your encyclopedia for the college basketball season. We are only 20 days away from college basketball. Today we're going to be talking about the SEC in our final preview of the Power 5 preview series. We got 16 teams to go over. We'll go over the power rankings. We'll go over the teams A to Z. We're going to talk about our projected first team All-SEC, the odds each team has to win the conference according to BetMGM. Of course, we'll provide some intel on some of the best preseason bets you can place for the SEC. I'll also tell you where you can get the best odds available on which sportsbook. Before we get into it, be sure to like and subscribe. Follow us on social media at Bracket Science with 2 S's. Check out our website, bracketscience.org. Only 1 S in science that time. But we got great apparel on there, new apparel, basic, cheap, good quality apparel on there. It's not expensive, so go check it out. Before we dive into the heart of the show, let's talk about the poll of the day. The poll of the day today is just 3 words: Kentucky or Arkansas. Who do you trust more this year? Is it Kentucky or Arkansas? Vote on the poll of the day. And before we dive into Beej's breakdown, let's talk about the trivia question of the day.
Trivia time!
All right, so the trivia question is, what SEC team finished the highest in KenPom's final rankings from last season? Remember, KenPom does his rankings based on efficiency. So let us know. We'll let you know at the end of the show today. Now, before we dive into Beej's breakdown, I want to give a quick shout out to our new clothing partnership. So watch the video. We'll be back in a second. Are you looking to support your school with a nice college t-shirt that is not only stylish, but also comfortable? I have got the shirt for you. Take a look at our basic approach to a t-shirt without all the big logos, strictly getting to the point, just showing your team's name. These shirts are comfortable, they're stylish, they're basic, there's not too much going on. They come in the colors white and gray. They are a great deal right now. Go check them out on our website, bracketscience.org, link in the description. Let's dive right into Beej's breakdown.
It's time for Beej's breakdown.
All right, so the big news in the college basketball world was the AP poll being released. Now, we're not going to go over this because we did an AP poll reaction, so click on that link right there if you're watching on YouTube, so you can go back and watch what our reaction was, the top 25, who was left off, which were, some of them were surprising. Texas Tech, few on there that we didn't think would be on there. Ole Miss is ranked. We're going to talk about them in the SEC. So go check out that video. You won't regret it. The other big news was the Boozer twins picking Duke. Cameron and Caden going to Duke, the son of Carlos. Very highly thought of high school recruits, and they are going to enter the season next year playing for the Duke Blue Devils. All right, now let's talk about the SEC teams in order, alphabetical A to Z, just going over each one of them briefly. So it's all about the SEC today. The SEC has been a consistent player in the NCAA tournament and as just a powerhouse in general, obviously in football, but really making sure really getting their way up there in basketball as well. The past 3 years, at the end of the year in KenPom's final rankings, the Big 12 has rated the best out of every conference. This year, the preseason KenPom rankings have the SEC taking over that top spot instead of the Big 12. So that's going to be a storyline to look out for the rest of the season. They are probably the deepest conference in college basketball this year. I think they will probably have the most bids out of any conference. There's probably 13, 14, 15 teams. Yes, that many out of 16 that have a legitimate chance of making the NCAA tournament. With that being said, everyone is chasing Alabama. Alabama coming off a Final Four last year and an absolutely loaded team this year. They have probably the deepest roster in college basketball. I will say that as of right now. Have one of the best coaches in college basketball, and they have one of the best players in college basketball. They will be led this year by Mark Sears. Mark Sears returning. He may be the preseason player of the year. Alabama ranks second in the AP poll, the first AP poll, just behind Kansas. I think their starting 5 is going to be Mark Sears. Aiden Holloway will be forced into a starting role at guard. He might be the 6th man. I have him in the starting role as a guard because of Chris Youngblood's unfortunate injury, where he will probably be out until, they're saying, like just before conference play, so you're talking middle of December or so. Chris Youngblood was the reigning American player of the year, him and John L. Davis, who we'll talk about here in a second. So it's looking like Mark Sears, Aiden Holloway, guard Latrell Wrightsell is back for another year. They do bring back Grant Nelson for another year, who really popped off at the end of the year last year and in March Madness. Then they also brought in center Cliff Omori from Rutgers, blocked about 3 shots a game last year. Alabama made the Final Four last year strictly by offense. They didn't have a rim protector. They didn't have defense. Cliff Omori is the complete opposite of that. He will come in and make an immediate impact. He is that big guy that they need down low. I project their NCAA seed to be 1. Their ceiling is the first overall seed in March Madness. I would say their floor is only about a 3 or 4 seed. That's how good this team is. If your floor is a 3 or 4 seed, that is spectacular. Think about the impact, I know this is a basketball podcast, that Nick Saban has had. Now, it's all money in this day and age. Nick Saban built this brand so phenomenally that their basketball program, now Nate Oates is awesome, don't get me wrong, and he's a huge part in this, but Nick Saban made Alabama such a powerhouse in football that they're popping off in other sports now. It's absolutely incredible. Really looking forward to this Alabama team next year. Let's move on to Arkansas. This is the biggest storyline in college basketball. Frankly, I think in all of college basketball. Is John Calipari going to Arkansas? It was the biggest offseason news. How will he perform? He's got a solid roster. He's got a Kentucky-looking roster. They are 16th in the preseason AP poll. Their lineup looks like this: at guard, DJ Wagner; at guard, Boogie Fland, the freshman; at guard, John L. Davis, who we just talked about, co-player of the year last year in the American Conference with Chris Youngblood; at forward, Trayvon Brazile. The only returning player for Arkansas is Trayvon Brazile. And at center, Jonas Adu, the transfer from Tennessee, should really help on the defensive end. They also got key pieces off the bench like Carter Knox, Billy Richmond, Zvonimir Ivisic, Adu Thiero. They're a pretty deep team. They're a very talented team. It looks like a Kentucky roster under Calipari. And a lot of people thought that Kentucky last year under Calipari with a team similar to this, at one point they were like a top 5 team, according to most people. So we'll see. High floor, low ceiling. Opposite. Excuse me. High ceiling, low floor. So I'm thinking their ceiling is probably about a 3 seed. I would say their floor is probably down about a 9 seed. I don't think I see a world where this team doesn't make the NCAA tournament, but it's a new team. You're mushing pieces together. Now it is a very veteran team for John Calipari standards. So I like their odds. I think they're going to be good. I project them as about a 5 seed or so. All right, let's move on to the defending SEC tournament champions, Auburn. Auburn is coming off of a tough upset loss to Yale as a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament last year. They have high expectations this year. They are a preseason AP poll number 11 team. Their starting lineup looks like this: at guard, JP Pegues, the transfer from Furman. Yes, he is the guy who knocked down that shot against Virginia a couple years ago, who broke Kihei Clark and Virginia's hearts. At guard, Miles Kelly, the transfer from Georgia Tech. This is a sneaky, fantastic transfer pickup. Not a lot of people talking about this one. Miles Kelly, I really look forward to seeing what he can do for Auburn this year. They also still have guard Denver Jones, at forward Chad Baker-Mazara, and at center Jonai Broom, who is the clear-cut second favorite to be the player of the year in the SEC conference, just behind Mark Sears. I think their ceiling is up at about a 2 seed. I don't think they can quite get to a 1 seed. I would say their floor is down about a 6 seed, which is going to be a little lower than most people think. But last year we were talking a lot about how this team really didn't have any quad 1 wins for a while. But this year they got a demanding schedule, as Bruce Pearl always does. I project them as a 3 seed, but I think I could see a world where they fall to a 5 or 6 seed. Heck, they won the SEC tournament last year and ended up as a 4 seed. So crazier things have happened. Let's move on to Florida, the Florida Gators. Their projected starting 5 is very guard heavy, which is what I'm kind of worried about with Florida, because it's guard heavy, but then when you go to the bench, their team is huge. It's like only big men on their bench. Go take a look at their roster. It is a strange looking roster. But their starting lineup looks like this: at guard, Walter Clayton Jr., going to be an absolute stud. At guard, Will Richard. At guard, Elijah Martin, the transfer from Florida Atlantic. At forward, Sam Alexis. And at center, Alex Condon. So it's a good team. It's a big team. It's guard heavy in the starting lineup, and then it's just 7-footer and 6'10" and above on the bench. So it's interesting. I don't dislike this team. I think they're very similar to last year where they got a ton of offensive talent. Can they do it on the defensive end? Elijah Martin will really help on the defensive end. He is a freak defender. Last year they could really score. They couldn't defend. That's kind of was the theme of a lot of the teams in the SEC. Kentucky, Alabama, even Florida, just high volume offenses, just couldn't really defend. I think they'll be a little better on the defensive end this year. I think they should be a little better than they were last year, but very similar to me and I have them projected as a 7 seed once again. I think their ceiling, they could get up to a 4 seed. I don't see this team missing the tournament. I think their floor is probably a 10 seed. So anywhere from a 4 to a 10. I got them right in the middle as a 7 seed. Looking forward to Todd Golden's squad this year. Let's move on to Georgia, led by Mike White. Georgia coming off a year after year of disappointment. Will this be the year that they can do it under Coach Mike White? Their projected starting 5 looks like this. Silas Damari Jr., watch out for him. He is going to be a sneaky good player in the SEC. Guard Tyan Lawrence. Guard Blue Kane. Forward Asa Newell, excuse me. Asa Newell is going to be one of the better freshmen in not only the conference, but in the country as well. Watch out for Asa Newell. And at center, Simoto Cyril. I think they missed the tournament, quite frankly, and I think we're leaning towards the end of the Mike White era. I know this is going to be an unpopular opinion. We're going to get a little hot takey in the SEC. I think Mike White is done, quite frankly, a very poor job at Georgia, and I don't know how Georgia fans really think about him. He seems like a really nice guy, but as of right now, I'm not really bought in on it. We'll see. We'll see about Georgia. Let's move on. Enough negativity. Let's talk about Kentucky. Kentucky, moving on from John Calipari onto the Mark Pope era. They have a completely new roster. Their projected starting 5 looks like this. They are preseason ranked 23rd in the AP poll, I should mention. Their projected starting 5 looks like this. Guard Lamont Butler, who made that huge shot to send San Diego State to the championship game against Florida Atlantic 2 years ago. They also bring in guard Kirk Risa, previously at West Virginia and Arizona. Jackson Robinson comes in along with Mark Pope from BYU. Jackson Robinson, elite scorer. Andrew Carr, who's been turning a lot of heads this offseason. A lot of people really expecting big things from Andrew Carr, the transfer from Wake Forest. And then at center, Amari Williams, the big guy in the middle. Center at Drexel last season. Good shot blocking guy, but good shot blocking guy at Drexel. He's not playing SEC competition. We'll see. This Kentucky team is really up for grabs. They also have Kobe Brea coming off the bench, who was the best shooter in college basketball last year. They got a lot of depth. They got some good pieces. Will they all come together? We'll see. I think if anyone can do it, Mark Pope. Mark Pope is a tremendous X's and O's coach, so we'll see. If he got just a ton of talent just 1 year, like with the Kentucky brand, they're going to be special. They're going to be special. I project their NCAA seed at about a 7 seed right now. I think their ceiling, they could get up to about a 4 seed. I think their floor is about an 11 seed, maybe a first 4 team, just because I like this team. I don't see them missing the tournament, but it's just that continuity. Can they do it? Can they do it? Let's move on to LSU. LSU coming off a decent season last year. People forget that LSU was not completely horrible last year. With that being said, the roster looks rather bland this year. Their projected starting 5 looks like this. At guard, Jordan Sears. At guard, Cam Carter. At guard, Tyrell Ward. At forward, Derek Fountain. At forward, Jalen Reed. I project their NCAA tournament to not exist, quite frankly. But, it's LSU. They're a big brand. They got athletes. They got quick. They should have some size. We'll see about LSU. Kind of hard to project, just a team that's kind of just fallen off the past couple of years. Looking to rebound. I project them towards the bottom of the SEC this season. Let's talk about Chris Jan's Mississippi State team. Mississippi State coming off an 8 seed last year in the NCAA tournament where they got beat by Michigan State. Mississippi State was overrated all year last year, and I stand by that. Michigan State was also overrated, and Michigan State just dominated them last season. Mississippi State has gotten to the tournament the past 2 years, but they just haven't done anything. Will this be the year that they can get over the hump? They have a guy who can get them there, and it is guard Josh Hubbard. Know the name Josh Hubbard. He not only could be a first-team All-SEC player, he's the type of guy who could pop off so much that he becomes the SEC Player of the Year. If he led Mississippi State to a 4 or 5 seed and averaged over 20 a game, he's right in the conversation. He's right there. Know the name Josh Hubbard. He is spectacular. They also brought in Kanye Clary from Penn State. They brought in Riley Kugel, who committed to Kansas from transferring to Florida, ended up at Mississippi State. They also brought in RJ Melendez, and they got Cam Matthews, who is that big, just absolute defensive monster, Cam Matthews. I project them to make the NCAA tournament. I got them as a 9 seed right now. I think they could get up to about a 7 seed. I think their floor is missing the NCAA tournament, though, but I think Josh Hubbard gets them there. He's got some serious talent. Let's move on to Missouri. Missouri did not win a game in the SEC last year. Yes, they did not win a game. 0-18, just absolutely pathetic. With that being said, they got a pretty good roster this year. They did well in the transfer portal. They got good freshmen. They brought in guard Tony Perkins from Iowa. They got in guard Marquez Warwick. They got guard Tamar Bates, forward Mark Mitchell from Duke, and forward Jacob Cruz to round out their starting 5. This team should be significantly improved. If they go right around 500 in the SEC, you're talking about probably a tournament team, quite frankly. Just like we said with the Big 12, if you go 500, you're in a pretty good spot in that conference. If Missouri can improve that much, that will be an incredible job by Dennis Gates. I don't think they can get it that far, but I'm not taking it out of the possibility. I think their ceiling is about a 10 seed, and their floor is definitely just missing the NCAA tournament altogether. But I see a world where they could get in there. I don't hate this roster. Not the biggest fan of Mark Mitchell. Think he's a little bit overrated, quite frankly, but I do see the upside there. He's got some potential. I just kind of thought he created more issues than really helped last year for Duke. Take that with a grain of salt because he can really score the ball, and he's really talented, don't get me wrong, but just didn't really fit in with Duke. I think Missouri, I guess the more I think about it, it will fit in a little bit better. All right, let's move on to Oklahoma. Oklahoma, led by Porter Moser, has quite frankly just been kind of disappointing the past couple seasons. Seems like they're really struggling with some NIL money, which is shocking at Oklahoma. I don't know. Maybe they just don't have guys, and he's not doing a good job recruiting. That can be the case. Their roster looks rather bland again this year. At guard, Kobe Elvis. At guard, Duke Miles. At guard, Glenn Taylor Jr. At forward, Jalen Moore. And at forward, Sam Godwin to round out their starting 5. The most shocking, the strangest of all the preseason polls in general to me. So when they did the SEC preview for just like the coaches poll where all the coaches vote, Oklahoma was 15th out of 16 in the conference. Yet KenPom's preseason rankings came out and they're 40th. Oklahoma 40th. Now I would have had them about 15th, 14th, or 15th out of 16, but they're 40th. Kentucky's 42nd. That means that KenPom's computers, which we know to be very accurate, has Oklahoma better than Kentucky. Also has Oklahoma better than, other teams like, the Wisconsin, Ole Miss, San Diego State, Kansas State, teams that are supposed to be, towards the top. It has Oklahoma up there. So maybe that gives Oklahoma some optimism. I don't know. I don't think this roster is very good. I think they missed the NCAA tournament, but hey, at least someone's throwing them some hope. Hopefully Oklahoma can get back. I think their ceiling is a first 4 team. I think their floor is obviously just missing the NCAA tournament for good. You know what? I'll give their ceiling about a 9 seed. I think they could get up there, maybe an 8 or 9 seed if it really, really came together. That Oklahoma brand carries a lot of weight, and they got a good home court there. All right, let's move on to Ole Miss. Chris Beard's Ole Miss team. Ole Miss ranked 24th in the preseason AP poll. Good for Ole Miss. Ranked in basketball. Love it. Chris Beard is a terrific coach. Think about what you want with him with the off-the-court stuff. He is a great basketball coach. Their projected starting 5 looks like this. At guard, Sean Padula, transfer from Virginia Tech. At guard, Matt Murrell. Know the name Matt Murrell. He can really score the ball. He is a sneaky good pick for first team all SEC. At guard, Dre Davis. At forward, Jamin Brakefield. At center, Malik Dia. I project them as an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament. I think their ceiling could be about a 6 seed. Their floor could be missing the NCAA tournament. I think they get in. Ole Miss missed it last year after a great non-con. I think this is the year 2 under Chris Beard. I think they'll be a lot better this year. All right, let's talk about South Carolina. Lamont Paris, one of the best jobs I've seen in as long as I can remember in coaching that South Carolina team last year. Made their way to a 6 seed, then just kind of ran into a blazing hot Oregon squad. With that being said, their roster does not look very good this year, quite frankly. It doesn't look, horrible. It doesn't look great, though. But you know what? Last year they weren't projected to make it there either, and Lamont Paris did it anyway. So maybe they got a good chance this year. I don't quite frankly see it. I like their big men. I think they got a good front court, back court, not quite sure. Their starting lineup looks like this: at guard, Jacoby Wright; at guard, Miles Stute; at forward, Zachary Davis; at forward, Colin Murray Boyles, who is spectacular, by the way, good pick for first team All-SEC; and at forward, Nick Pringle, the transfer from Alabama. Had some off-the-court issues last year with Alabama, remember. A little bit of a work ethic thing, but we'll see. I project them to miss the NCAA tournament, but I would have projected that team last year to miss the NCAA tournament 100 out of 100 times, and they were a 6 seed. So Lamont Paris proved me wrong. Can he do it again? We will see. Let's move on to Tennessee, Rick Barnes' squad. Tennessee coming off that 2 seed with Dalton Knecht last year, who was probably the second best player in college basketball. He is gone. He is with the Los Angeles Lakers, so they turn over a new leaf. Brought in some mid-major guys, hoping to do the same thing as Dalton Knecht. Their projected starting 5 looks like this. Oh, I guess I should probably mention that Tennessee is ranked 12th in the preseason AP poll, and they are also 13th at KenPom. So they got some pretty high expectations, a little higher than I would have them. The projected starting 5 looks like this: at guard, Zakai Ziegler, who will probably be the favorite for the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. At guard, Chaz Lanier, at the transfer in from North Florida. At guard, Darlinston Dubar transferring in. At forward, Igor Milicic. And at center, Felix Akpara, also the transfer. He transferred in from Ohio State. So they got some scoring. Chaz Lanier, Darlinston Dubar can really score the balls. Zakai Ziegler, good point guard, great defender. And Felix Akpara can really guard the hoop. So watched a lot of Ohio State basketball last year. Wasn't real impressed with Felix Akpara, but maybe he can make a big leap. He is a good defender. He's a solid defender. Tennessee teams are always going to guard, and they seem to have some guys that can score the ball. Chaz Lanier can really shoot. We'll see about this team. I think their ceiling is about a 3 seed, maybe a 2 seed, and I would say their floor is down at about a 7 or 8 seed. I project them as about a 5 seed in March Madness this upcoming year. Let's move into the state of Texas, from where Rick Barnes currently coaches to where he used to coach, the Texas Longhorns. Texas is coming into the year with, quite frankly, some decent expectations. They are ranked 19th in the AP poll of the preseason. They brought in a ton of guys who can really, and I mean really, score the ball. Listen to their starting 5, and then we'll talk about it. At guard, Jordan Pope from Oregon State. At guard, Trey Johnson, 5-star freshman. At guard, Tremont Mark, the transfer from Arkansas, also previously at Houston. At forward, Arthur Kaluma, the transfer from Kansas State. And at forward, Caden Shedrick, back for another year. He was at Texas last year, also previously at Virginia. Now, what do you know? It's a lot of transfers. It's 4 transfers, and it's 4 transfers that really scored. Jordan Pope, ball-heavy guy at Oregon State. Trey Johnson, I have heard, might lead the entire country in terms of freshmen in scoring. At guard, Tremont Mark, very ball-dominant guy. He's good. He's a good player. And at forward, Arthur Kaluma did the same thing at Kansas State. Really always had the ball in his hand. How will this team combine? Rodney Terry is not on the hot seat, but it's a little bit warm. It's getting a little bit warm. I mean, he made the Elite 8 his first year, but that was kind of just Chris Beard talent there, quite frankly. That team was so good. I think I could have led them to the Elite 8. Last year, they kind of underperformed a little bit as a 7 seed. They won a game in March Madness, but got beat in the round of 32. But they had a talented team. This year, it's a talented team. It'll be a challenge for Rodney Terry to put this team together. I think their ceiling is up at about a 4 seed. I would say their floor down at about a 9 seed. Have them projected as a 6 seed as of right now. Stay in the state of Texas and keep talking about Texas A&M. Texas A&M has very high expectations this year, as they did last year. They're 13th ranked in the preseason AP poll, mostly because of guard Wade Taylor, the 4th All-American sort of caliber player for Wade Taylor, not just in the SEC, All-American in the entire country. He will start at their point guard. They also have Manny Obaseki, who really popped off at the end of last year. As soon as he started playing well, the team started playing well. Remember, they were a 9 seed, took Houston, the 1 seed, into overtime, lost a heartbreaker there. So this Texas A&M team, they got the talent. They just kind of underperformed a little bit for a while last year, but figured it out at the end of the year. Unfortunately, just had a bad seed and ran into a Houston team. At forward, Sullivan Washington. At forward, Anderson Garcia. And at forward, Henry Coleman III. A lot of players who have been in the system already, which is why they're ranked so high. This is a good team. This is a sneaky good team to make a Final Four this year. I truly believe that. I say their ceiling is up at about a 3 seed. I would say their floor is down at about an 8 seed. I project them right in the middle there, right about a 5 seed. All right, now the final team to talk about, Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt turns a new leaf over to Mark Byington, who was previously at James Madison, won a game last year, won the Sun Belt last year. Great season for James Madison. Vanderbilt has been the dumpster in terms of basketball for the SEC. They did bring in guard A.J. Hoggard, who was a prolific transfer for their level. Hot take, I don't think A.J. Hoggard's that great. Michigan State was so excited to get rid of him, quite frankly. He's going to have to be the star in this team, and I think if A.J. Hoggard's your star, I mean, we'll see how it goes. I'm not that big on it. Their starting lineup also looks like this with A.J. Hoggard. They got Jason Edwards at guard, Grant Huffman, Tyler Nickel at forward, and Devin McLaughlin also at forward. I project them to miss the NCAA tournament. All 16 teams. That is all 16 teams. Let me know what you think of the teams. Go ahead and leave a comment below. If there's something that I didn't pick up on that you pick up on, let me know. Let's take a short break here, and then we'll dive into some of the power rankings. All right, let's talk about the odds to win the conference and some of the preseason power rankings for the SEC.
Power rankings.
All right, the favorite and my favorite to win the SEC this year is Alabama. They are plus 200. These odds are according to BetMGM. They are plus 200 to win the conference. At 2, I do have Auburn. At plus 400. At 3, I have Arkansas, John Calipari's Arkansas team at plus 1,000. At 4, I have Texas A&M at plus 1,600. 5, Tennessee at plus 800. 6, Texas plus 1,500. At 7, I got Kentucky at plus 1,200. 8, Florida at plus 1,600. 9, Ole Miss at plus 1,600. 10, Mississippi State plus 2,000. And that is where I will cut it off for right now, as I believe there are going to be 10 teams from the SEC in the NCAA tournament, those top 10. At 11, I have Missouri at plus 2,500. At 12, I got Georgia plus 8,000. 13, South Carolina plus 4,000. 14, Oklahoma plus 6,000. 15, LSU plus 5,000. And last, unfortunately for Mark Byington, is his Vanderbilt squad at plus 8,000. Now let's dive into our projected first team all-conference in the SEC.
It's time for the Bracket Science Preseason All-Conference Team.
So we've mentioned a lot of big names. Now keep in mind those names, the Colin Murray Boyles, the Josh Hubbards, who could be on here. They are not going to be on this list. This is what I ended up with. At guard, Mark Sears, who I do have as the player of the year. I think this is kind of just a no-brainer. I think he's the best player in the conference. If you want to throw Jonai Broom, I'm willing to hear you out. I think Mark Sears is the best player in the conference. Mark Sears, Wade Taylor IV from Texas A&M, John L. Davis from Arkansas, Walter Clayton Jr. from Florida, and to round it out, Jonai Broom from Auburn. That is what I got as the projected first team all-conference in the SEC. Now, let's get into Beej's best bets.
It's time for Beej's Best Bets.
All right, so the best bet I found in the SEC, I'm begging people to please bet Alabama to win the SEC. I think this is almost a lock. I really do believe so. I'm a little lower on Auburn than most people. Maybe that's what's fluctuating me. I think Alabama is going to win by I think they're going to win the conference. I got them at plus 275 on ESPN Bet. That is great odds. Plus 275. I mean, Kansas has worse odds than that in the Big 12, and they got 5 teams in the top 10 of the AP poll. They're a little more top-heavy. I think the SEC is obviously a little bit deeper. I think Alabama's worlds above the rest right now. Plus 275 on ESPN Bet. Give me that. Let's stick with Alabama. I have them at plus 1,500 on ESPN Bet to win the national championship. I think that is a great bet as well. Got Final Four experience. They're so deep. They are so deep. This team is really good. Plus 1,500. I mean, Duke, UConn, and Kansas are all plus 1,000 or lower. Plus 950, 900, depending on where you're at. Plus 1,500 for Alabama. Yeah, they're a top 2 team in the country. Give me that. Plus 1,500 on ESPN Bet. Now, a little bit of some stretches. This is some good odds plays, I think, if you're into that and you want to, maybe look for a cash out. Any team can make the Final Four. We learned that last year, right? Any team can make the Final Four. So when they make the Final Four, you can cash out. These are good just value bets right now in terms of the SEC. Let's start with Texas to win the national championship. Plus 6,500 on FanDuel. Plus 6,500, pretty good odds for a brand as big as Texas. They can recruit. They have the talent. Can they put it all together? If they do, there's a world where I could see them making a run to the Final Four and cashing out. I like Texas at plus 6,500. We're going to stick with the same trend. And also in the same state of Texas, Texas A&M to win the national championship is plus 8,000 on BetMGM. They have a lot of continuity. I like the Texas A&M bet better than the Texas bet, quite frankly. And they have better odds. Plus 8,000. Yeah, that's worth a risk. Wade Taylor IV can lead this team there. They also have continuity around them. Love this pick. Plus 8,000 on BetMGM, Texas A&M. That's going to do it for our show today. Jumping into the conclusion, let's give you our trivia answer. Remember, the trivia question was, what SEC team finished the highest in KenPom's final rankings from last year? Let's think about it for a second. It is not Alabama, even though they made the Final Four. It was Auburn, even though they lost in the first round to Yale. They were 4th. They finished 4th. Crazy stuff. Auburn looking to put me in the dirt with my pick of Alabama to win the national championship and to win the conference. I do still think it's Alabama, but I think Auburn they were. Sorry, Auburn, don't hate me. They were kind of computer trickers for a lot of the year last year. I know they won the SEC tournament. I don't know. I'm not going to speak too much more on it, but Auburn 4th in KenPom last year. I talk up KenPom, talk down Auburn, and Auburn was 4th at KenPom. Just completely being a hypocrite of myself, but that's all right. We'll see how they do this year. Next week will be the show that everyone wants to know, the Best Bets preseason show. We're going to go through all of them. BetMGM just released odds for every single conference, including the mid-small majors, everything. I mean, you want to know who's going to win the SWAC. You want to know who's going to win the MAC, the MEAC. Tune in to next week's show. We'll place some great future bets together. Remember to vote on the poll before you leave. Kentucky or Arkansas? 3 words. Let us know who you're feeling more of this year. Like and subscribe before you leave. Follow us on social media. Check out our website and our new apparel. And have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you again real soon. See you later.